Hello and welcome to the Sacred Path podcast. I am your host, Priscilla Bernstein, the Soul Alignment Specialist. And in this podcast, we will literally be talking about all things of the soul journey. So whether that be your spiritual path, sacred plant medicines, healing, transformation, sacred sexuality, divine union, soul alignment, manifestations, and so much more. We are literally covering it all, and we are going deep, 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 as well as far and wide. We are really going to be quantum jumping and helping you understand not only what it means to be living in your sovereignty and within your divine self, but what it means to actually live a life on purpose and a life of fulfillment while you are following your soul purpose and soul mission in this life. So get ready, buckle up, enjoy the episode, and we'll see you on the other side.
Hey lovies, welcome to another episode of the Sacred Path podcast. I've been offline from recording podcast episodes for a minute, being on a 2-month-long road trip and then coming back in a completely new energy and recalibrating and just embodying that new energy, feeling really safe and secure in that energy before blasting out into the world in a really big way. So ultimately in today's episode, I want to talk a little bit about not only the divine feminine uprising that is happening on the planet, but this idea of rapture, which I think is pretty funny how people are, the evangelists and the extremists, the Christian extremists are thinking that people are going to be lifting up into the sky and giving tips on like what to do and how to do it. Oh, bless their hearts. Okay, so I really want to discuss this in depth and give more detail about not only what is happening in the collective consciousness, but what is happening here on Earth as a result, okay? So, with that being said, first and foremost, we'll just dive into this rapture, BS. So ultimately, what is actually happening is a shift in consciousness, okay? We have about 1.5 years, maybe almost 2 years ago, we anchored in the new timeline for New Earth, okay? And as a result, we've been kind of here, parallel on this timeline with the old 3D, okay? So if you imagine, we start out here, we split, and we've been parallel with them. And so now what's happening with this rapture, I can't stop laughing about this. So the only people that are actually elevating and rising are the people that are choosing the path of higher consciousness, okay? And so this is going to keep going here, and we're separating further. There's a bigger gap that's coming in between the two timelines, okay? And this shift in consciousness is coming from this place of understanding that the God is within you. It's no sky daddy out there. There's nobody up in the heavens that's granting wishes and being like, you get this and you get this and you get this because you're a good Christian, or because you believe in Jesus so much, or because you read the Bible every day. Like, no, I'm sorry, that's not what's happening. What's actually happening is, if you understand more about Christ consciousness, this is actually the awakening and the rise of the divine feminine coming into power, coming into her reign, if you will. So for millennia, the divine feminine voices, other than cultures that honor the divine feminine, that really showed, I'm gonna go in a lot of different directions here, so stick with me, okay? Because I feel like I have to kind of segue throughout this to make these points. But ultimately, when we the divine feminine uprising has been happening for quite some time. We really started to see the beginning of this around the Me Too movement, okay? And so as the divine feminine has gotten stronger and stronger over the years, through millennia, and even back when Jesus was alive and sharing his scripture, you know, what is happening to him, and sharing his teachings, if you will, God's teachings through him, this was something that ultimately was higher knowledge. And when you look deeper into the Gnostic text or the Gnostic Bible of what Mary Magdalene had to share, which a chunk of the Gnostic texts are missing. But ultimately, what was happening was that Mary Magdalene, being the divine feminine and being the divine feminine to Jesus Christ, they were in divine union with one another. She wasn't a slut. She wasn't a whore. She wasn't somebody that was just a groupie, you know, or a fan. She was actually his confidant. She was the person that was his divine counterpart, his divine feminine. She was just as powerful, if not more powerful, than Jesus himself. And she ran a mystery school. She healed. She was a healer in and of herself. She had her own capabilities and her own abilities. And what he was teaching her or sharing with her, that she later created the Gnostic texts around, was actually that there's nothing outside of yourself. This power is within each and every one of us. And when we learn how to utilize it, when we awaken it within us, we become our highest version of ourselves. We become our God self. We elicit or resurrect into Christ consciousness, okay? And so with that being said, this rise of the divine feminine that's happening on the planet, this is actually something that not only has been gaining momentum over the years, but what we are seeing play out in our physical reality on the world stage, in politics, is the actuality of the toxic patriarchy, anything built out of lies, from a place of fear, from a place of, misusing power, from a place of trying to step on or keep your thumb and keep control over others. All of those semblances of security and safety and foundations that were the structure that we lived within, anything that was built on the lie, that was not unconditional love, that was not harmonizing, that was actually not in the frequency of authenticity and the truth of the God within, right? The harmony and the balance of what it means to truly be in a God state. Anything that's built on anything other than that is crumbling at this time. And so we're seeing that play out in very real time. We're also seeing play out a collective soup, if you will, a collective, what's the word I'm looking for here, Spirit? Collaboration of energy playing out, because within ourselves, there has been, within the collective consciousness and the human race, within each and every one of us, there has been so much disharmony, so much disconnection, so much of the questioning of our identity, of who we are, of why we're here, of what we're doing in the world, right? And that disconnect, that questioning, the judgments even that we have about ourselves, about our bodies, that creates disharmony in our field and essentially out in the world, right? And so what we're seeing play out is actually the collective contribution to the disharmony that has been wreaking havoc within each and every one of us, right? And so when we go back to this idea of the shift in consciousness, our shift in consciousness is via spirituality. It's not through the vehicle of religion whatsoever, because religions divide. I spent pretty much my whole life, like from a very young age, was very in tune. I went to a private school when I was little, and I was very in tune with the, we had to go to church every morning at this private school, and I was very in tune through every sermon, through every church, like sit that we had to do. And I was fascinated by it. There was something in me that was so drawn to it. And I love the iconography when it comes to religious iconography, the saints, the stained glass, the rituals that happen in church, of, the body of Christ and the blood of Christ, like taking communion. Like, I was obsessed with all of this. But there was always something that felt as if there was a miss. Like, there was something that wasn't quite matching up for me. And so it wasn't until I was I think a junior or senior in high school. And I went to that private school till 5th grade. So from kinder through 5th, I was going to church every morning and really kind of taking all this in, right? And when I got into my junior or senior year, a friend of mine gave me a tiny, like, pocket-sized version of the Book of Tao. And when I read that, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. Like, this is hitting my soul as truth. I had never felt anything resonate so deeply as truth within me that I did in that moment of reading the Book of Tao, okay? And so from there, I started to look more into, like, Buddhism, into Taoism, into the teachings of, these Eastern cultures, Hinduism. I was fascinated by it. In college, I studied world religions because I was fascinated by it. And then it wasn't until I was in my early 20s and I had a Kundalini awakening. I was living in Boulder at the time with 3 of my high school buddies. They were all guys. And I was doing yoga in my room, yoga and breathwork in my room, and I had a Kundalini activation and awakening. And at this time, and for many years, I had been doing drugs, I had been partying, I had been running away from myself, numbing, and just felt very lost in not only who I was, but in what I was doing in the world. Again, talking about that disharmony, that judgment, that chaos, and just like disconnect, right? So I had lost touch with who I really was, and I never felt like I ever fit in. Like, no matter how young I was, I never felt like I ever fit in. And that's a story for another time, but I did always feel like a black sheep. I did always feel like nobody saw me, nobody got me, nobody understood me. When I would talk, people wouldn't listen to me. Like, there was all these things that made me question who I was and why I was here. And so it wasn't until I go to the first, after I left Colorado, after I had that Kundalini awakening, I came back to Texas and I went to massage therapy school. And after massage therapy school, I started to do massage therapy. And I did this for a year. And they don't teach you in massage therapy school how to ground your energy. That's too, like, woo-woo and metaphysical for them. They're very science-based. They're very anatomy-based, right? Like, it's very much like medicine. And so, or the school that I went to at least. And so after a year of doing this, I realized, like, wow, I'm very sensitive to people's energies, and there has to be another way that I can help people without touching them for an hour. And so in that, I was led to go to a yoga teacher training. And at that first yoga teacher training, when I was learning more about the Bhagavad Gita, when I was learning more about just the 8 limbs of yoga, not so much the asanas, but the real in-depth teachings of yoga, yet again, there was that deep resonance of truth in my soul about, oh my God, this is it. This is it. And it's like all the pieces connected. And I saw, and if you know about the deeper teachings of yoga, not just the asana, right, but the 8 limbs of yoga and the Bhagavad Gita, if you've read up on these things, they do represent yoga as like a wheel, and it has like all these different parts of the wheel that make it whole. And so it wasn't until that moment in time that I realized, like, wait, this is the truth. Everything that I had learned up until this point hasn't quite matched. Like, there's always been this disconnect of like, well, yeah, that's great, and I really love this, and I can see how this and this connect, but like, there's still a missing piece here. There's still something that's like not adding up, right? And so I'm saying all this because I wholeheartedly believe that Jesus, you don't hear about him from like his 20s, like, you know, on until he comes back in his 30s. I believe that he went to India and learned from these yogic gurus, ultimately, these gurus and saints, because when you go down the path of yoga, not just the superficial yoga that everybody does to stay in shape and to, you know, ascend and get on the spiritual path, right? It's a great opening for the spiritual path. But when you really get into the meat of it, when you really get into the depths of it, and you will see this if you've ever read Autobiography of a Yogi, the abilities that these yogis and these gurus had to access more of their brain, to access more of their supernatural abilities. And on my path, I've been on the yogic path for over 20 years. I got my yoga teacher certification in my early 20s. I'm now 43. And this is something that not only opened my eyes to really the spiritual path, but it's something that I had kind of always been on that I didn't really realize. And when you go into the deeper knowledge of what these yogis and gurus, and the more that you practice yoga, the more in tune you get, not only with your higher self, but with your inner child, and the more that you're doing the inner work, your shadow work, integrating your shadows, healing your traumas, doing somatic release, you know, like all of these stack and build on each other. And so when I was teaching yoga, I remember the first time I channeled the class. It was like a guru was speaking through me, and all of a sudden I knew so much more than I ever did, but I was like literally on the verge of passing out, falling asleep, because I was so tired after pulling an all-nighter the night before in the studio for college, because I had a check-in the next day with my teacher and had to finish a piece. So so I had forgotten my stuff and I just winged it. But in that being tired, being like kind of like, I got out of my own way ultimately and started channeling. And what came through was not only the best class I ever taught, and everybody reflected that back to me, but at the same time, I realized, oh my God, like I'm just a vessel for this. And I've definitely probably done this in another life, right? And so I even think, if I remember correctly, I even think Deepak Chopra wrote a book about this called Buddha, or yeah, I think it was, I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called, but I think it was called Buddha. And it talks about how Jesus went and learned from Buddha directly. But ultimately, it's like when you realize the ways in which you can open yourself up in to the divine in a way that you are tapping into your supernatural gifts. It starts through not only having some sort of like regimented like thing that you're doing. Granted, we're in a mass awakenings now, right? We're in a quickening, and people are awakening in ways where they're not doing anything, before they're awakened. So I can't actually like hold that, as complete truth, but it's like when I started, this was something that it's like, this was my journey, and a lot of other people's journeys, is there's this necessity or need to have some sort of like ritualized commitment to the path, to continue to keep opening yourself up, to continue to keep showing up, to continue to keep tapping in, right? And the more that you do this, and Kundalini is really something that will awaken this a lot quicker in you, Kundalini yoga. And so this is something that I do with a lot of my clients. I pull certain breathing techniques and certain types of, I guess, I don't want to say teachings, but like practices that Kundalini uses to really awaken. And it goes back to epigenetics ultimately, and utilizing your awakening your Kundalini and awakening ultimately your tree of life. So when you look at the Sephirot in the Kabbalah, and you layer it with the human body on top, with the chakra systems, everything fucking lines up. And what's so beautiful about this is everything's interconnected. And in studying world's religions, I actually realized like there's a thread that goes through all of the religions, but every one of the religions, when it was created, has a lot of dogma around it to adhere to the time in which it was created. And then it was cultivated or made to fit whoever was creating it, okay? And so something that I actually really appreciate around Buddhism is that they say, like even the act of saying that you're a Buddhist, you're like creating some sort of box around yourself, you're confining yourself in some way, shape, or form, as opposed to just saying, you're a spiritualist or you follow the teachings of Buddha, but you're, a spiritualist and, one with God. And so that is ultimately what we're getting to. So I hope I haven't lost you in kind of going in all these directions, okay? But ultimately, the rise in the divine feminine, when we think about the energies of divine feminine and divine masculine, I'm not talking about man and woman, I'm talking about energies here. Everybody has divine feminine and divine masculine aspects within themselves. Our right side is our divine masculine. The divine masculine is really related to the sun and to action, to force, to passion, to the linear timeline, to the right side of the brain being really mathematical, being logical. And the masculine is the builder in the 3D, is that part of you that goes out and does things, that part of you that takes action, the part of you that builds the foundation, right? Where the divine feminine is the left side. The divine feminine is your receiving side. It's not your giving side. The divine feminine is the moon, is related to the moon and the moon cycles, right? Really listening to cycles and feeling. It's the emotional side of you. It's the left brain, artistic, creative side of you, right? And so when we think about these energies, when I talk about the rise of the divine feminine, yes, I'm talking about the divine feminines on the earth, aka women, coming into power and really stepping into their reign of leadership, of anchoring into a new way of being that is more in alignment with harmony, with unconditional love, with creation, and with the frequency of coming together and holding space for those that cannot hold space, if that makes sense, right? The divine feminine being in leadership or being on the throne, this divine feminine reign, if you will, is how I will probably relate to it moving forward. But this is ultimately us coming together and creating that ring, that wheel, right? That continues to move forward as a whole for the greater good of the whole. Okay? So when I say this, going back to the toxic patriarchy that we've been living in for millennia, that is what's crumbling right now. That is what we're seeing a dismantling of. And you can see how power hungry and how almost, what's the word I'm looking for here? How like radical and desperate, that's the word I was looking for, desperate people are getting to hold on to this old way of being, to hold the power, to continue to keep eliciting, the semblance of power, how they're putting their money forward. And then you're seeing a collective of, people come together to overthrow a government. You're seeing that it played out just recently in Brazil. It just played out, I think, today or yesterday in Italy, right? Something just played out in Mexico of all places. Like, I'm getting all lit up with goosebumps here. And both, I think, Mexico, Italy, and Brazil have all put a woman in power. Okay. So there's no coincidences here. Coincidences do not exist. What exists is alignment. And in the old timeline, there was no alignment. Because we're raising in the collective consciousness, because we're raising in frequency, because the divine feminine is awakening within each and every one of us, we're awakening to our divine gifts. We're awakening to our higher knowledge. We're awakening to the ancient wisdom that's been passed down to us. And what's so fucking beautiful about the divine feminine lineage is that women, and I am talking about gender here, women hold the coding and continue to keep bringing forth the coding from their whole ancestral line of the maternal lineage. Okay? All the women that have come before them, you, if you're a woman, carry that DNA within you. And that is how genetics change over the years. And if you're part of my collective, if you resonate with the things that I'm talking about, if you hear and read the things that I say and it resonates as truth in your soul, in your being, and you're part of my soul tribe, you are called to change your genetic coding. You have been called forth and forward not only into leadership, but to change your DNA for the future generations. I was like, what's the word here? I'm in straight channel mode, so things don't always like fire in my brain to make sense. Okay. But for the future generations coming after you. Okay. And even if you're not planning to have children or you won't have children in your lifetime, you're still part of your family line. Okay. And even though your quote unquote genetic coding isn't going down and passing down, the actual coding can and will be shifted through your lineage. So let's say you have a brother or a sister that has kids after you've done your generational healing. And so many of you, I already know that you're doing this. So many of you are aware that you're doing this for your family line. And you're like, when the fuck did I sign up for this? I didn't want to do this. But it's like, at some level, your soul said, yep, send me in, coach. I'm ready. We're going to do this. And at this certain age, at this certain point in time in history, I'm going to take on my family lineage, my family line, and change our genetic coding. So those that come after me will not have to, one, hold the amount of karma, but 2, be the most healed versions of themselves, and 3, be the most harmonized versions of themselves to build new earth. Okay, so if you're in my collective, and this is where I get really excited, because I've talked about this, and it doesn't matter what's happening out there. Like, there's so much chaos happening out there, but it is 1000% a crumbling and a restructuring of the foundations that quote unquote seemed secure and that we were living within, but were not built for the greater good of all. They were built for the 1%. They were built for those in power. They were built for the white man, right? Like, they were built for those that wanted to control the masses, period. And we've seen this through so many different civilizations and how they literally extinct themselves, right? Because they become power hungry. But that's not going to happen here. We have been sent down as starseeds, as light workers, as light bearers, as spiritual warriors, as earth angels, to come together to support and help the human race, to anchor in these new codes for the planet, and to raise the collective consciousness to one of harmony, to one of unconditional love, and to one of authenticity. Okay? And so through these waves of mass awakenings that are happening, these really started to like get going and build momentum in 2019. And it started around Lionsgate portal of 2019, actually. 8/8. And it's only built momentum since then. And we're seeing these waves of awakenings happening quicker and quicker and quicker. And what took me 20 years to build and get through, and what took me years to heal and transcend and transmute to become the person that I've become today, is literally taking those that are just waking up months, weeks, days. Like, everything is happening so much faster. And I just read a thread today that said the healer suffers first and goes into the depths of hell first to come back and bring the medicine to the masses, to those that need it. And no truer sentiment, no truer words have been shared, right? So it's like, that has been my journey. I had to go through hell and back 1,000 times. I had to be the black sheep, to not be understood, to run away from myself, to party, to numb myself, to follow my intuition, to hit rock bottom over and over and over again, to understand that, like, I'm always supported, I'm always taken care of, the divine has always been here. And then to realize, wait, it's not anything outside of myself, like, it's in me. And the more that I've anchored into that, the more that I've awakened my gifts, the more that my intuition has come online, the more I was capable. And what first started out as just being clairaudient on my 30th birthday has expanded into not only having all the clair abilities, but now having telepathy, and my intuition and awareness and deciphering, like, I thought was at 100%. I thought I was like on fucking fire. Ooh, I went on this 2-month-long road trip. I was doing grid work. I was purging and activating and working with the land and you know, decoding and recoding and, you know, dropping in with friends and family and you know, just camping and being in all these different areas. It was like a 4,000-mile road trip. And I get back here and all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit. My deciphering's not at 100 anymore, and it's not even at 1,000. It's like at 10,000. Like, whoa. I've like blown my own mind of what I've been able to pick up on who I'm like picking up on what I'm hearing, on how I can decipher like who it's coming from, where it's coming from, like I'm just like this is like, had this happened to me a year ago, I probably would have thought I was going insane. But everything that I've been through was preparing me to step into this version of myself, to step into and onto my reign, my throne, into the embodied goddess that I am now, where I'm not taking shit from anybody. I'm not allowing anyone or anything into my sphere, into my energy, if it doesn't feel resonant, if it's not activating me, and if I'm getting the clear, like, no. And I didn't get that before. I was just an open book before. I've started moving in silence. I've started creating in silence, and then I just pop out when I'm told to pop out. Nobody knows what's going on with me, really. I was back for 3 weeks before I even made a call to tell anybody that I was back. And there's something that has been so sacred in that. But at the same time, why I'm telling you all of this is because not only do we have to awaken these parts of ourselves, but we have to come to this place of empowerment, this place of owning our sovereignty, our divine gifts, the divine spark within us. I was burp confirmation. Thank you, Spirit. Not only that divine spark within us, but understanding that we are the holders of this ancient knowledge, of this ancient wisdom, that our soul came down at this day and age, at this time in history, to awaken ourselves so that we could awaken the masses, so that we could help the world not only come back into alignment with the truth of who they are, but back into alignment and harmony with our most authentic selves, which is our soul self, right? And in 2018, getting the title from my guides and angels as soul alignment specialist, I'm like, who am I to fucking say that? Who am I to fucking call myself that? And they're like, who are you not? I'm like, okay. Well, I put on that jacket and I've worn it and I've built my business around it. Did I know what the fuck I was like talking about or doing? Like, I knew enough in the beginning. I knew what I was being given to share in the beginning, and I shared that. And then I continued to keep trusting the divine, and then I was letting my intuition lead. I was letting the divine lead. I was allowing myself to be a vessel to the divine, even when it took me to rock bottom. You have no idea how many times I have cursed out my guides and angels and my spirit team. But it's like that anger, that rage was divine. It's what catapulted me into the next thing. There is something to be said that every step of your journey is necessary. And so for those that think that the rapture tomorrow is, they're going to be lifted up to heaven and watching these videos of people saying, okay, don't look down. You have to just like let go and surrender and look up. It's like, well, honey, that's actually not going to happen. And if you do, it's probably just AI or something. Like, that's not really what's happening, right? And what I've learned through going back to where I started, what I've learned through the religions and studying world religions is there's a lot of dogma that works for those in power to keep you suppressed and out of your power. So it's not going to come through religion. And the Bible wasn't even written because of what God said. The Bible was written later, and it was written from a bunch of priests, a bunch of male priests, to get people to give up their power to something greater than themselves. I want to say in the Byzantine era. I wish I would have like given you guys notes so I could just be like, bah, 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 you know. But I just, you know me, I channel everything and I'm just kind of winging this. I was like, oh, I got to talk about this on my podcast. Okay. So with that being said, it's like the Gnostic texts from Mary Magdalene are the closest thing to what Jesus said, to the teachings of Jesus. So when he said that I am the way, and I'm not trying to get dogmatic here, okay? This is just pure fact. And through the research that I have done and being called into the Order of Mary Magdalene and being one of her stewards and a Magdalene goddess in myself, part of the Order of the Rose, if you will, it's like anyone that's brought in is an embodiment of her, is an embodiment of her medicine. And being called into that order 2.5, 3 years ago, I've worked very closely with her. And I'm a multi-channel conduit, so I work with a lot of deities. I work with a lot of ascended masters. I work with a lot of angels and even other spiritual beings, otherworldly beings, star seeds, you know, like other star groups. Alien races, like I work with them all, but it's all for the ascension of humanity. It's all for the support of humanity, and it's all of the light. And so in working with her very closely, I got to see and got to uncover and was told and shared with the syncing up of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and this idea of divine union, of us coming into divine union as a whole, as a human race. And so often for the last, I want to say like 3 or 4 decades, there's been this fight, if you will, for women's rights and women having to step into their divine masculine to be met with the amount of respect that they deserve, to be seen as equal. But again, we're not the same. We're not equal. We don't have the same type of drive and work ethic. And it's due, like physiologically, it's like we get burnt out so much faster. And so when we're really listening to that, when we're really honoring our own cycles, not only our like feminine menstrual cycle and working with the moon, but our cycles of feeling like I need rest and recovery. I am burnt out. I'm reaching a pivotal point where if I don't stop, I will burn out. If we're not listening to our bodies, we've become so disconnected as a society and as a whole, and so overstimulated that we've learned to function mostly in our divine masculine. And so there's this reclamation happening not only within the feminine race, the female gender, but within the fullness of everyone on the planet awakening to their intuition, awakening to their bodies and listening to their bodies more, awakening to their creativity, awakening to that version of themselves that is the most authentic version of themselves, their soul self coming online. There's more men and women now on the planet doing inner work, inner child healing, doing the shadow work, doing their trauma work, their somatic healing, allowing themselves and nurturing themselves to become the best version of themselves. There is more of that happening on the planet now than there ever has been, okay? And so now we're seeing this rise in the divine feminine, not only within the female gender, but within the whole of humanity. Everybody's intuition is waking up. Everybody's supernatural abilities are waking up. The more that you're in tune, the more that you're choosing this higher level of consciousness, right? Here we go. The more that you're choosing this 5D consciousness, the more you're going to ascend, the more you are going to taken up into this rapture or bliss into heaven on earth. because you're not feeding into the fear, because you're not feeding into the matrix or the machine, because you're not feeding into the dogma that's being fed to you and shoved down your throat, because you're not feeding into the fear mongering that's being pumped through our media channels to, the amount that hasn't been shown on US news that is happening in the world is mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. It comes in like days later, okay? Because the platform like TikTok, where that shit's fire, like rapid fire coming through as it's happening. Like, did we hear anything about these like quote unquote protests on the national news about people coming together, and they were calling them concerts, or what do you call it, like festivals, right? Like these mass groupings of peaceful protests that they were calling festivals, right? It was all over TikTok, it was all over social media, but I did not see one story on the news about it. Not one. Okay? And so really there is, and if you've been following me for a while and you've been reading my stuff on Substack or Patreon, I've talked about this quite a bit. If you subscribe to my cosmic newsletter, I talk about this quite a bit, about the revolution coming, this like revolutionary energy building. Well, it's here. It has begun. It is starting. And so we're seeing this. The more that we can come together, the more that we're working with one another, the more that we are unifying in this energy, not only of harmony, but of human rights, of choosing what's right, of, that was a lot of burp confirmation. There's like 3 burps right there. Of allowing us to not only learn how to self-regulate in the midst of chaos, but to find that peace within and really anchor into not only our peace, but our groundedness, our power, our sovereignty within ourselves. Once you find that divine spark within and you build that connection with the divine, you become unshakable and unbreakable to anything that's happening outside. Anything that's happening outside of you. You are unfazed and unfucking bothered. And you want to know how you do that? You do that through the consistent work. You do that through not consistent action out there, but consistent action in here, in here, in here. Okay? And I'm pointing to my body, my heart, and my head for those of you listening that aren't watching the video, okay? So this is something that does need the ritual, that does need the consistency of the work put in. And once you're on this path, there's no getting off of it. I'm sorry. There's no getting off of it. There is you choosing the path of higher consciousness, of spirituality, your spiritual path back to your soul, your soul's truth, your authenticity. And then there's you choosing the lower dimensional frequency and timeline. And if you're listening to this, I don't think you're part of that lower timeline anymore. But you get the choice right now. That's what this rapture is all about. You have the choice. But if you've chosen this spiritual path, and if you've been on it, and you've had your spiritual awakening, and you've undergone at least one dark night of the soul, or you're still in it, you're on this path for the rest of your fucking life. And as many times as you want to get off, you can try. You can try. Oh, baby, you can try. But spirit, your spirit team, your guides and angels, the universe, source, whatever you want to call it, all of it will make your life a fucking living hell, and will make it so dense and so off-putting to try to redirect you back to the rightful path, which is your sacred path. Hence why this podcast is called the Sacred Path Podcast. Because there's no getting off of it. And it's like your divinity comes from within you. You are God embodied. I'm not saying you are a God. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you are a reflection of God. You are... God is coming through each and every one of us. We are all, quote unquote, a creation of source. I don't even really like to use the word God, but I know for some of you it really resonates. But it's very personified for me. And so that's why I don't like to use it, because it's so much bigger than some like sky daddy, just like a guy with a beard in the sky, like sitting on a cloud, right? Like that's not God. It's the Alpha and the Omega. And I think the movie that kind of summed it up the best was Everything Everywhere All at Once. So if you saw that and how they represented source, it is a donut. And they were cheeky about it and made it look like an actual donut, right? But it's like, that is how source works. The void and everything that comes out of it is source, the all-encompassing aspect of it, okay? And it's so far beyond what we can actually fathom in our minds, so it makes it difficult, but follow along the best you can. So when we're first born as a soul, we shoot out of the middle and we go to the outer edge of the donut, and we live that lifetime. And then we come back as a new soul and reintegrate back into... It's not called heaven, but back into wherever our soul group is. And it's again, so much bigger than you can wrap your head around, okay? And a great book that talks about this is The Journey of Souls by Michael Singer. Or no, not Michael Singer. Just Google Journey of Souls. This was written by a therapist, a psychiatrist, that took people into regressive therapy and for their trauma and whatnot. And he started leading them through past life regression. And in every past life that he took, he worked with thousands of patients. And in every past life that he took all of these patients through, he would record their sessions. And in every single one, when he took them to their time of death, he asked them, what happens when you die? Where like, tell me what's happening to you. And every single person may have used a little bit different verbiage, but they all said the exact same thing. I'm getting sucked into some sort of like channel or straw of light. I'm leaving my body and getting pulled up through this channel of light. And we're greeted, if we're a younger soul and we don't know what's happening, we're greeted by somebody we knew in our lifetime to make that transition easier. Some people were like, oh, I've done this before. I don't need anybody to meet me there. Like, I know what I'm doing, moving and grooving. Let's fucking go. And then they all have a meeting with the council about, and this is a council of higher level souls that don't have to go back down to earth anymore, right? And they account for the things that they were supposed to do in their lifetime that they had signed up for. If they didn't do it, having to honor and account for that, ultimately make amends for that in some way, shape, or form. And then they go back to, quote unquote, their soul group. And when they talk, every single person that he interviewed said the exact same thing. It is so much bigger than what a human brain can comprehend. But it's like everybody has their soul group or soul pod of souls that are working together that are at the same level. And you can ascend from those soul pods and move up, but you never move down. And you can leave your soul group or your soul pod and move up if you're trying to ascend faster, okay? And so each lifetime that you go out and you've learned more and your soul gets a little older and more mature and more, is signing up for something else, but it has learned a lot of lessons, you don't go out as far. You get shot out and you go out, 3/4 of the way, and then you come back around. and then you shoot out again after, you've done with your soul groups, you're going back over your past lives, you're going back over the life you just lived, you're studying and you're understanding what it is that you need to do for your next life, what it is that you're wanting to sign up for in your next life, right? So let's say that you ended up having, you ended up wronging somebody in this lifetime, and you know that you have to come back and pay that karmic debt, right? But in paying that karmic debt and what you did to that person, so let's say that you were really, really wealthy in this lifetime and you starved, like you were a ruler of a country and you starved all your people and you let them go hungry, right? So in that next lifetime, you may sign up to come into a life of really having nothing, of going hungry, of needing to beg, of not having this stature in life whatsoever, so you can understand what you put these people through, so your soul understands that lesson, right? And so whatever you're dealing with in your lifetime, whatever all that hard shit is that you're dealing with in this lifetime, guess what? There was a past life where either you're paying karmic debts or where someone else is paying karmic debts to you, but it's like, it's all happening because you signed up for it. You're not given the full view of what you're going to sign up for in each life, but you're given a choice. You have this life or maybe even a third life to choose from, and you get glimpses into those lives, but in each life you're having to hit certain life lessons so your soul can understand, can get the lesson, can learn and grow and evolve. Okay, so all of this to say, I know I'm going on a lot of different tangents here, so if you're still with me, I really appreciate it. But all of this to say, when your soul is evolving, when your soul chose to come down here at this point in time in history, and you're following my content, you, my dear, are already on the spiritual path. You're already on your sacred path, and there's no getting off of it. There's no going back. You can choose to drop down into that 3D timeline, but again, your life's going to be really fucking hard. It's going to be really fucking dense. Things are going to continue to be playing out in a way that you're not wanting. And those that are choosing the 5D higher consciousness timeline, you're going to feel really fucking liberated. And the way that you continue to choose the 5D higher consciousness timeline is by adhering to the guidance of your intuition, the guidance of your higher self, by following your divine feminine and allowing that to awaken, by embodying yourself, by nurturing your body, by continuing to double down on your self-care, your soul care, your self-love, and letting go of judgments, doing your inner child healing, doing that shadow work, integrating your shadows, integrating the dark parts of yourself so you can be the brightest light, your most authentic self, your most sovereign self. The things that I teach, the things that I share, the things that I talk about, I'm not just talking out of my fucking ass, like this is where we're headed as a culture, as a human race. And I'm just trying to help people get there as quickly as fucking humanly possible, right? I had to go and I had to do all of this stuff over the last 20 years so I could come back and be like, hey, we're going to do this in 8 fucking weeks and I'm going to give you everything that you need and you just keep doubling down on it after that, or, however long my courses are, right? 8 weeks, 4 months, 8 days, like whatever it is that I'm building, it's like I'm giving you the keys to the fucking kingdom. I'm sharing with you what it is that I did that worked for me, what I did that's worked for all of my clients, what I did that has helped so many people get to the next fucking level. And then once I let you go, it is up to you to stay on the path, to continue to keep doing the work, right? I knew that I had a huge purpose when I came here. And I had a good friend who was my my network chiropractor, and I went to her twice a week, every week for years. And she sat me down one day and she was like, Priscilla, I've never met anybody like you. She said, you get to a level, you transmute a lot of shit very quickly, and you get to your like next level, and then you're like, cool, let's go, what's next? And she's like, you never plateau, you never just stay there. And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, I know I have a big purpose here. I just got to get through all the bullshit first, right? And so what's funny to me about that is like, I've had people call me brave. I've had people call me courageous. I've had people tell me things like, oh, I don't know how you do what you do. Like, I could never do that. You're so brave for going out and like traveling on your own, or, oh, like you're so brave to just go out and just start your business and not have any backup plan, you know? And it's like, yeah, maybe to you it's brave, but to me, it's like the only option. Anything else, it feels like my soul is like slowly dying. And I've had to learn a lot about myself. I've had to go through hell and back 1,000 times over. I had to hit rock bottom and be dragged across that rock bottom over and over and over and over and over again, probably more times than most people. And I had to go through so many dark experiences in this lifetime that if I laid them all out to you, you probably wouldn't believe. You probably be like, and you came out like this, and you're this kind, and you're this open, and you're this soft. Like, no way. Yes. Because I chose to keep my heart open. Because I chose to keep aligning. Because I chose to keep bringing myself back to the sacred path. Because I chose to trust not only blindly in, sorry for my dog barking, in the divine, but in the path that I was being guided down. Okay. And there is nothing in this life that will break you more than this path. But it's breaking you down to break you open. It's literally crushing every idea and identity you ever had that does not align with the truth. It is a path full of darkness. It is a path full of twists and turns, and I mean, it is like literally the hero's path. So if you think about any fantasy movie, that any sort of hero has had to go on this path and had to fight the demons and had to, be dragged through hell and almost die, like, that's it. That's what this spiritual path is all about. But you're here at this point in time in history being given a choice. Are you going to step into the higher timeline and evolve and help build the new earth and help anchor in this higher level of consciousness? Or are you going to choose to keep feeding the dense beast that is the 3D matrix that we have been living in for millennia? You get that choice. And once you understand that the divine is within you, that it's nothing outside of yourself, that you are an expression of God, a fragment of God coming down and expressing itself through you, having a human experience through you, and you can start to see everyone else being kind of a player in this game of life and expressing God through them, even if they seem quote unquote evil. Everybody's got their part to play. There's a lot of dense energy here. There's a lot of darkness here. And if you've been following me for quite some time, I've talked about this. We're in a spiritual war between light and dark. And I'm not talking about black and white. I'm not talking about race. I'm not talking about color. I'm talking about dark forces that do not want the light to win. Again, going back to those like fantasy movies, right? To the archetypal like hero versus the villain. There are villains that were sent here to play out that role, and they're doing it beautifully in this lifetime. But it's literally just God expressing itself through that person, and they've chosen, hey, I'm going to be the villain this time around. And God said, okay, are you sure you want that choice? And they said, yeah. And guess what? They're all going to have to atone for it at some point and have that karmic debt. But it's just part of it. There are also other races, other alien races that are here that are hoping for the human race and the collective consciousness not to rise. They're trying to keep it at this level to hold control over Earth. Okay, this sounds like a fucking fantasy novel that I'm talking about, but this is all real. There's so much more that we can't actually see that we have access to. If I have, like, literally the things that I have seen, the things that I have witnessed, the things that I have undergone and have traversed, if I told everybody, if I laid it all out, you guys your mind would be blown. But at the same time, it doesn't make it not true. Just because your logical mind can't process it or can't figure out how it fits into your narrative doesn't mean that it's not true. You just you've had blinders on, you haven't been opened up. And so the more that you open up, the more multidimensional that you become, the more access you gain. And I've been on this path for over 20 years. So I've seen a lot. I've felt a lot. I've been through a lot. I've exorcised demons. I have done exorcisms on people. I have pulled negative energies and entities out of people. Like, that is an offering that I offer. Do I love to do it? No, I don't. But it's something that I offer, and I charge a lot of money for, but it's like, it's big fucking work. So it's an energetic exchange. How much is your life worth without that dark entity ruling you? Like, I would say what I'm charging is not enough. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not about me. But what I'm sharing is my personal account. By choosing this path and by the blinders being taken off layer by layer by layer, I've seen the multidimensionality of what is actually happening. And it doesn't matter what's happening right now, what's playing out, and how invested we are in it. This is your choice, your point in time, your 0 point to make a different choice. Are you going to continue to choose to feed what's happening out there? Or are you going to choose to feed your vision, your higher dimensional self, your soul, your authenticity to come online, to have your blinders peeled back layer by layer by layer so you can be your highest version of yourself to do the work you're meant to do here on this planet? Okay. So that's the rapture in a nutshell. And that is ultimately how the divine feminine is rising into her reign too. And I say her, but it's like, it is the feminine, the divine feminine as the female race coming back into power, coming back onto the throne, and coming back to a place of reverence, of honoring the divine feminine within each of us through the women that are on this planet. Because you've seen, if you're a woman, you understand and you know this very well, that there is a hatred of women. There is a fear of women. on this planet in these cultures. And they fear us because they can't control us. They have been controlling us for millennia. And they've done so in very sneaky, very powerful ways. But the more that the divine feminine awakens and steps onto her throne, meaning the more that you awaken to your gifts, the more you transmute your pain into power, the more you are integrating your shadow and breaking through the layers of illusion that you've been allowing yourself to live within, the more that you are owning not only your sovereignty, but the power that you have within to access not only the divine, but the ancient wisdom from your ancestors, from every culture, every time, every space, every dimension and reality. The more that you're in tune with your body, with your womb, with your heart, the more that you've de-armored your cervix and your heart and your throat to speak your truth, to own your truth, to embody and live your fucking truth, that's what I do as a coach. That's what I do as a mentor. So if you want to work with me, come the fuck on. Let's fucking go. But that is how you separate yourself from being disempowered. That's how you step into or onto your throne. That's how you step into your own reign, where you become the most powerful, most magnetic, most magical version of yourself. You become the fire because they can't burn something that is already fire. And they weren't burning witches, they were burning women in their power, in their sovereignty, with their divine gifts, because they didn't understand it, because they wanted control, because they wanted to say how you healed or how things were done, right? Like, this is so far beyond what is happening now. Even going back to like the idea of arsenic being put in tampons, bleach being put in the cotton in tampons. And that's why you shouldn't even be wearing tampons, but if you are, you should be buying organic and using the most natural fibers that you can, right? Like the fact that there are 0 women in a room where men are making decisions about women's bodies. They want to control what is happening with women to keep us disempowered. So the more that you can dissolve your connection with the matrix as it is, the more that you choose this higher timeline, this 5D and higher consciousness, the more that you are doing your inner work, the more that you're stepping into your sovereignty, honoring your body, healing your trauma, healing your inner child, the more that you're doing that, the more power you're gaining, the more magnetic and magical you're becoming. The more you allow yourself to open up to your divine gifts, to your ancient wisdom, the more that you're working with your guides, your ancestors, your angels, the more you're going to be given and the less control they have over you. And that is how you take back your throne. That is how you come into your goddess reign. That is how the divine feminine is rising into her reign. And we are literally stepping into the era of the divine feminine reign. So I hope you guys are ready. If you're a man listening to this and you've gotten to the end of this podcast, I commend you. And I just want to say thank you for being a divine masculine who is supporting the divine feminine. I want to tell you thank you for taking what we have created on the 5D and beyond and anchoring it down and establishing it in the 3D. Because without you divine masculines supporting us, I don't think we'd be getting as far as we are. So I just want to say bravo, kudos, I love you, and thank you. I see you. I see the work that you're doing. That was a big channel. I love you guys. I hope this was helpful to you. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me, leave a comment, share this with a friend, with another divine feminine in your life, or somebody that needs to hear what's actually happening with this rapture and where we're heading. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys on the next one. I will do my best to be more consistent because I really want to be, but life sometimes gets in the way, and to be creating content for a podcast, for Instagram, for Threads, for TikTok, for Substack, I know I can batch things, but at the same time, the collectives are very different. And because I'm a channel, it feels like there's a necessity to rework and change them and channel for each one. So it's a lot on me, but I appreciate you for as long as you've been following me. Welcome to the Soul Tribe if you're new here, and make yourself known. Say hi. I'd love to know that you're here. And like I said, you can follow me on all the different channels, and I am doing my best to be as consistent as possible. So stick with me. We'll get there. I love you guys. Ciao.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Sacred Path podcast. It is always an honor and a pleasure to share the wisdom, knowledge, and insight that I have learned on my journey and that others have learned on theirs. So please tune in, share, like, and follow, give us a review, and if you would like to work with me in any capacity, please follow the link to my website and either choose a sacred offering on the website or send me a DM. Love you guys. Hope you have a wonderful day.